Governor Joe Lombardo says no, vetoing 3 gun-related bills today.
And Fox 5's Joe Vigil joins us live in studio now to break down each of these bills. Joe?
Yeah, that's right. So this week, legislative Democrats approved 3 gun violence prevention bills. One would protect election workers by prohibiting guns at polling places. Another one bans people under the age of 21 from owning an assault weapon. And the last bill bans anyone convicted of a hate crime from owning a gun for 10 years. Today, the governor's office returned the bills along with letters from Governor Joe Lombardo explaining his veto justification. The governor also released a statement saying, "I will not support legislation that infringes on the constitutional rights of Nevadans." As I stated in my letters, much of the legislation I vetoed today is in direct conflict with legal precedent and established constitutional protections. Therefore, I cannot support them. The Nevada Democrats released this statement after learning about the veto, saying in part, quote, "With the stroke of a pen, Governor Lombardo just sold out Nevadans to the extreme gun lobby. I don't know what's worse, that he went against the overwhelming majority of Nevadans who want this legislation signed into law, or that his campaign promise to keep families safe proved to be nothing but empty words." Live in the studio, Joe Vigil, Fox 5 News, local, Las Vegas.